All right, now if you'll turn over to hymn number 64. Hymn number 64, just over in the glory land. I've a home prepared where the saints of light just over in the glory land, and an home to be by my Savior's side, just over in the glory land, just over in the glory land. I'll join the happy angel band, just over in the glory land, just over in the glory land. There with the mighty host I'll stand, just over in the glory land. I am on my way to the mansions fair, just over in the glory land, there to sing God's praise and His glory share, just over in the glory land, just over in the glory land. I'll join the happy angel band, just over in the glory land, just over in the glory land. There with the mighty host I'll stand, just over in the glory land. When the blood was throng, I will shout and sing, just over in the glory land. Glad hosannas to Christ the Lord and King, just over in the glory land, just over in the glory land. I'll join the happy angel band, just over in the glory land, just over in the glory land. There with the mighty host I'll stand, just over in the glory land. All right, amen. Good singing. I'm going to have Brother Robinson come up.
Amen. You got your Bibles? You got me there? Yeah. You got your Bibles, turn to 2 Timothy chapter 2. 2 Timothy chapter 2. Oh, I also hope to see Brother Wade tonight, but I'm the best he got. I pray he gets the feeling better. I hope everybody's had a good day. 2 Timothy chapter 2, starting verse 1. It says, Thou therefore, my son, be strong in the grace that is in Christ Jesus. And the things that thou hast heard of me among many witnesses, the same commit thou to faithful men, who shall be able to teach others also. Thou therefore endure hardness as a good soldier of Jesus Christ. No man that warreth entangleth himself with the affairs of this life, that he may please him who hath chosen him to be a soldier. And if a man also strive for masteries, yet he is not crowned, except he strive lawfully. The husbandman that laboureth must be first partaker of the fruits. Consider what I say, and Lord give thee understanding in all things. A few months back, it was back in October, we had a co-worker that got killed in a car wreck. And it was hard. And getting to thinking about things as we study the Bible and how we're supposed to share the gospel with everybody. I realized that I never talked to him about it. I worked with a man for 6 years and never once gave my testimony. And it just kind of weighed heavy on my heart that I never did. He was a good guy. And after going to his funeral, I did find out he was saved. Praise the Lord. It's just amazing how we tend to, or I tend to think that, or I don't think sometimes, well, most of the time, let me tell you most of the time. So with my kids, because Daddy is kind of crazy. But, so that's what I'm going to be talking to you all tonight about. And it's about a burden that we should all have. And it's also a commandment that we've got from our Lord Jesus Christ to go out and spread His word so everybody can hear. The more and more I study my Bible and studying things for Sunday school and realizing that my faith comes from God and God alone. And the only way I could ever have the faith that I have is because someone was burdened enough to share the gospel with me. And just because I heard it once don't mean they won't hurt me to hear it again. Right? So, I don't know if y'all remember the earthquake back in 1989. I don't remember it very well because I was just a baby. I was old enough to remember seeing it on TV. If I got the right one. I think this Planet World Series was talking about it earlier.
Yeah.
But there was this man that was trapped in his car. It was on all the TV stations, in the newspapers and the magazines all over the country. A man trapped inside his car when the October 1989 earthquake struck in California. And the upper deck of the highway collapsed on top of another. He was confined in his crushed car for over 3 days, and he was finally pulled out alive, a victory for rescuers who had struggled against discouragement after many failed attempts. Nevertheless, he had severe injuries, and he succumbed to his injuries, and he passed away. Well-wishers all over the nation mourned his death, but his family and friends were thankful that he survived long enough to be rescued alive and did not have to die alone in his crushed vehicle. At least the people who cared about him were able to share his final hours, and God had given him those precious times, those last memories that he left behind for the loved ones and for strangers who had heard his story. Even though he lost his life, the story is a remarkable story of survival for so many days, his tough determination, the dramatic rescue efforts, and the faith of his family inspired people everywhere in their hardest times. In their times of pain, trouble, and discouragement, they learned to put their trust in God. So it brings up three questions. Three questions. The first question I have, and you'll just have to go with me on this, I'll get the point. Have you ever stopped to wonder what makes first responders want to put themselves in harm's way? What would drive a person so hard to make them go into a burning building or climb into a vehicle that could go up in flames at any given moment? And the third question is, where does this love for fellow human beings come from? Now, those are questions that we can ask from a worldview of there is no God. So if we rearrange the questions a little bit, the first question could be, what makes a person to wonder about another's eternal condition so much that they would go to rescue them? The second question could be asked, what makes a person want to live in a hostile land where proclaiming the gospel gets them persecuted up to the point of death for spreading the gospel? And number three is the same. Where does this love for fellow human beings come from? So here's the answer I got for the first answer, first question. Have you ever stopped to wonder what makes first responders do their job? God wrote it on our hearts. He wrote it on our hearts. You turn to Romans chapter 2. Romans chapter 2, starting in verse 12. It says, "For as many have sinned without law shall also perish without law. And as many as have sinned in the law shall be judged by the law. For not the hearers of the law are just before God, but the doers of the law shall be justified. For when the Gentiles which have not the law do by nature the things contained in the law, these having not the law are the law unto themselves, which show the work of the law written in their hearts, their conscience also bearing witness, and their thoughts the mean, while accusing or else excusing one another." Even though people don't believe, God's law is still written in their hearts. We all know people that will do anything for anybody. They'll give you the shirt off their back. And we call this the good old boy syndrome. It's all works, right? And we know that we can work our way to heaven. That's not what the Bible says. That's not what the Bible says. But we have a built-in concern, a discernment that we got from God's law that's written on our hearts. The answer to number 2. What would drive a person so hard to make them go into a burning building or climb into a vehicle that could go up in flames at any given moment, or cause that person to live in a hostile land to proclaim the gospel? It's life and its purpose. It's for life and its purpose. This can come as a bitter pill for many to swallow, but life is not all about me, is it? It's not about us. The psalmist wrote in Psalm 16, verse 2, says, "I said to the Lord, you are my Lord. Apart from you, I have no good thing." God, as the center of all things, is the reference point by which we judge that which is truly right and truly wrong. He is the focus of our lives as our Creator and our Redeemer. God established purposes for our lives as follows. We are to come to faith. And that happens by the work of the Holy Spirit. We are to grow in that faith. Then we are to live in that faith. And we are to share that faith, no matter the cost. These are our purposes in life and our pursuit to do all things in the glory of God, not ourselves. These activities should occupy our entire being every day. Number 3, where does this love for fellow human beings come from? It comes from God. It's a welcomed burden that we carry for caring for one another. A university professor once said the character of society is enhanced not by its ability to avoid carrying burdens, but by its willingness to carry burdens. In the final moments of life, God's purpose might be to test the resolve of others to carry burdens. The Apostle Paul noted that burden carrying begins with the family. He wrote 1 Timothy 5:8, "If anyone does not provide for his relatives, and especially for his immediate family, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever." It can be difficult to adjust a family's lifestyle to care for the need of a loved one. And the word burden rightly fits. I remember when my grandpa got sick. The whole family came together, and everybody took care of him. And he hated it. I've always watched my grandpa take care of everybody else. And we all had to adjust the doctor's appointments, even when cancer strikes or a car breaks down. I mean, it's a burden that weighs heavy on people. We don't expect it, right? And we can help each other out. We help each other out by being here. We edify each other by praying for each other, lifting each other up, caring for each other. A simple phone call means so much. A note or a card. Just knowing that someone cares. And we have that want to because God wrote it in our hearts. What must be considered, however, is the distinction between the world's view and God's view of a burden. The world sees little value in carrying burdens. Research has already been done to calculate the cost savings associated with the person who ends his or her life versus someone who continues that life with a terminal condition. We see evidence of that today in our society. We see where insurance companies are being driven to force the doctors into treatment the way they can save money. The world also considers the lifestyle changes demanding and sharing burdens. In our independent pursuits of self-determination, carrying excess weight is something we don't want to do, right? We're taught to trim up, run as lean as we can. If it don't fit my idea of how my life ought to work, then I don't need it in my life. We call it negativity, right? That's what the world teaches it. Any time that we're going through any kind of pain and suffering, it should be a time that we cry out to God more. And it should be a time where God is glorified. We don't need to turn to our other devices. It used to be a time I turned to the bottle. Through the years, and through the people God put in my path, that bottle was nothing but an empty bottle. And my problems was always there the next day. It's amazing how many problems God takes away and never gives back. We can see that God venerates burden bearing. He respects it. It becomes a litmus test, I know I should have put that in there. A litmus test of faith on Judgment Day. That's what happens when you use big words you used to. You can read about that in Matthew 25. It becomes not only a lifestyle that befalls all of us because of the plight of someone else, rather it is a lifestyle we seek as a reflection of the love we enjoy from God. So our burden should be for the lost. We should worry about our fellow brothers and sisters. We should be the first responders to the lost. They are our family, our friends, our co-workers, our neighbors, and the everyday strangers that we meet. We should be the first responders because God demands it. He commands it. Soul winning is not an option. It's not a spiritual gift. It's not a church growth program. It's a clear, unavoidable command of God. And only God has the power to save. We should be the first responders for the lost because there is a hell. Psalms 9 verse 17 says, "The wicked shall be turned into hell, and all the nations that forget God." Revelation 21:8 says, "Those without Christ will have their part in the lake that burns with fire and brimstone." It's real. We should be the first responders to the lost because we know how to escape hell. Imagine having the cure for cancer and never sharing it. Or seeing someone's about to get run over by a car and not wanting them. That's what we do when we don't share the gospel. We need to be the first responders for the lost because people need to hear the gospel. 1 Corinthians 15:34 says, "Awake to righteousness and sin not, for some have not the knowledge of God. I speak this to your shame." There was a preacher who long ago with his family befriended an elderly lady. She became a kind of a grandmother to his children and was included in many family gatherings. After a while, their friendship had advanced so far that he felt awkward about giving her the gospel. He wished he'd done it sooner, but he didn't know exactly how to approach her with the subject. Years went by, and one day he finally shared the gospel with her, and she was very quiet when it ended. And she said, "Are you telling me that when I die, I'm going to hell?" And he said, "That's what the Bible says." And she kicked him out of her house and never invited him back. She said, "You're not my friend. I don't ever want to see you again." I know it's kind of harsh, wasn't it? But when we know the truth, and we don't tell the truth, that's the reality of it, right? We do not need to withhold the gospel from anyone, because everyone deserves to hear the gospel. We need to be the first responders to the lost because there is a heaven. John 14:3 says, "And if I go prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there you may be also." What a blessed promise from Jesus himself. Heaven is real. It's not because of some movie we see. It's because of the work that Jesus Christ has done. We need to be the first responders because it glorifies God. John 15:8 says, "Herein is my Father glorified, that ye bear much fruit, so shall ye be my disciples." There are those who say that our prime motivation is not to win people to Christ, but to glorify God. We are to glorify God. I can't save you. You can't save me. Only God can save you. We need to be first responders to the lost because it encourages believers. When people are led to Christ, believers are encouraged. It lifts their spirits up. Everybody rejoices. Well, it makes me smile every time I see someone walk up the aisle here. Or even when they join our church. We like to see our families grow, don't we? We need to be the first responders to the lost because it perpetuates truth for the next generation. Who's going to teach our children? We know the TVs are going to teach them if we don't step in, right? Public schools are getting pretty bad too. I'm grateful for we've got a president who is encouraging Bible teaching in our public schools now. Be praying for that. We pray it's done right. We'll pray it's done right. Even if they are just studying it for literature. God's Word is sufficient enough if we can just get it in their hands. We need to be the first responders to the lost because it demonstrates the power of God. It's amazing what God can do. Our theological expertise and persuasive speech does not lead people to Christ. It's totally 100% of the work of God. God commanded us to spread the gospel, and He done the rest, and He is still doing it today. Souls get saved because the Spirit of God works in their hearts. We've got to do it because we must face Jesus at the judgment seat of Christ. And we'll have to answer for everything that we've done. That scares me the most. How many missed opportunities did I have? Why didn't I stand up? We must be fearful. We must be the first responders to the lost because our hands will be stained with the blood of the lost if we don't tell. Ezekiel 3:18 says, "When I say unto the wicked, thou shalt surely die, and thou givest him no warning, nor speakest to warn the wicked from his wicked way, to save his life, the same wicked man shall die in his iniquity, but his blood I will require on thine hand." Jesus spent his life here on earth for all of us. He suffered shame, humility, and the pain of the cross. Even during his time of suffering, he was saving souls. He had the power to save himself, but he didn't look at himself. His love for us was greater than love for himself. Some in our lives has a burden. I know y'all been here for me and my family, and I can feel your prayers, and I appreciate them. It's a peace and a joy and a happiness you can't describe when people are praying for you. And most people I just see here at church, I don't hang out with you or nothing, but everybody asks how you doing. It's nice. I'll end with reading the words of this song, and I'm not going to sing it for you, but I will read it. I believe it's another McCamey song. And it's, You Never Mentioned Him to Me. It starts out, it says, my friend, I stand in judgment now, and I feel that you're to blame somehow. On earth I walked with you day by day, and never did you point the way. You knew the Lord in truth and glory, but never did you tell me that old story. My knowledge then was very dim, and you could have led me safely to him. And though we lived together on earth, you never told me of the second birth. And now I stand this day condemned, because you failed to mention him. When in the better land before the bar we stand, how deeply grieved our souls will be. If any lost one there should cry in deep despair, you never mentioned him to me. You never mentioned him to me. You helped me not the way to see. You met me day by day and knew I was astray, yet you never mentioned him to me. Oh, let us spread the word, where'er it may be heard. Help groping souls the light to see, that yonder none may say, you showed me not the way. You never mentioned him to me. A few sweet words may guide a lost one to his side, or turn sad eyes on Calvary. So work as days go by, that yonder none may cry, you never mentioned him to me. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this opportunity to get up and preach again, Father. Father, just ask that it was your word and not mine, Father. I pray you continue to burden me about sharing your gospel, Father, and what you've done for us through your Son on the cross. I'm not deserving, Father, but you've done it for me anyhow, because of your love. Thank you again for this opportunity. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Well, we have any new requests or any updates? Yes, ma'am.
Brother David Talbert has a scan on Tuesday to see if all that radiation that he took is worked or not. He's not looking forward to it. And then, my niece that's going to college in Tennessee, Caroline, she was sliding into home plate. She dislocated her foot. It went 180 degrees in the opposite direction. She broke it in two places. She had a spiral break in her ankle, I think it's the fibula, and she had to have surgery yesterday. She had 15 pins placed in and one plate, and she will be in a cast until the 1st of May, and then in a boot. She probably will have more surgeries to do on that, but she's on a sports scholarship, so
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen with that.
What's her name?
Her name's Caroline.
Caroline?
Yes, so she's in really bad shape right now.
Is it Smith? What's her last said, Miss Kelly got her date,
Yeah, February 7th.
Kelly Quinn surgery is February 7th. And time will be updated as Brother James allows, you know.
I just got it there.
Just got a text. Yes. Anybody else?
Thank you for prayer for Jane, she's doing a whole lot better. Just coughing a little bit right now.
We got another trooper here with us. Just had a gallbladder surgery about a day or two. We're glad to see you're doing well. I know, Caroline, Kara Coble, last Friday she stumbled and fell and she broke her wrist. So I haven't heard anything else on that. Pray for her. I don't know anybody else. Brother Wade. Of course, Brother Wade. Yeah, Brother Wade, he said he got a really bad cold. Yeah, we'll pray the flu stays that day for sure.
Last night, 17 died.
No, last year it hit us pretty hard here at the church. A ton of us out. It had me down for 2 weeks. Any other prayer requests or praises?
Charles is gonna have hand surgery tomorrow,
Who?
Doris Charles.
George Charles. All right. If there's no others, those of you who are able, if you want to, you can come up here to the altar and pray. Thank you all again for listening to me tonight.